Hello and welcome everyone to my review of Final Fantasy VII Remake. It would be an understatement to say I was excited the moment the PS3 tech demo was unveiled at E3 2005. It was only intended to showcase Sony's next-gen console, but in reality, it spun rumors across the gaming world. Having felt I had missed out on the original, this couldn't have come at a better time. It now looked like I would be able to play as Cloud that has fingers, and not as this human-cow hybrid. The leap in performance from the PS1 to the PS3 was truly massive. But the important question remained, was Final Fantasy VII being remade for the PS3? Turns out many of us were misled. It really was just a tech demo. Any rumors of production were denied, and news regarding a remake eventually went cold. Since then, Square Enix has released plenty of other games, including some new Final Fantasies. But Square has had its fair share of stumbles, and that goes for its beloved franchise as well. Although a visual marvel, Final Fantasy XIII was criticized for its writing and linearity. Final Fantasy XIV's original world was literally cratered before heading back into redevelopment. Final Fantasy XV was a Backstreet Boys road trip with some pretty in-your-face product placement. Despite their faults, I still like these games, except for Final Fantasy XIV 1.0. That was undeniably hot garbage. But with the exception of the relaunched MMO, single-player Final Fantasies have been hit or miss. By now, Square really needed a big win. So in 2015, against all odds, Final Fantasy VII Remake entered full production. This time, it was real. And on April 10th, 2020, it was available for purchase on the PlayStation 4. 14 months later, an upgraded copy dubbed Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade was released for the PlayStation 5, which included an expansion called Episode Intermission. PC players received a port of PS5's Intergrade 6 months later, just before the end of 2021. Even someone like me who hasn't played more than a couple hours of the original knows of the mythos that is Final Fantasy VII. The original FF7 is practically deified in the eyes of many Final Fantasy fans. But I'm not here to give you a comparison between the two. I'm here to give you a newcomer's perspective into the remake of the legendary title. As sort of a prologue to this review, I had so much fun playing this game. It was a triumph, and if you've never played the original, you can still very much enjoy this game like I have. In my opinion, the biggest contributing factor to the game's success lies with the characters and the writing. Even stone cold characters like Barrett warm up to you and you to him. Tifa is sweet and charming, and Aerith is playful and witty. How could you choose between them? The game is fully voiced, making it much easier on the illiterate. A considerable amount of the game is brought to life through cutscenes and dialogue, so a lot of emphasis was placed on voice acting. And it's a good thing it was superb, otherwise it would have been truly tragic. The original plan of having the Advent Children voice actors reprise their roles did not come to fruition on the English side, but the Japanese cast members were brought back. The remake uses an algorithm that adjusts characters' facial movements in order to match lip syncing and emotions for each language. The AI motions were nowhere near perfect, but it was good enough. But what surprised me the most was the writing. It was more mature than what I was expecting. The adult language was a bit of a shock at first, but I thought it was a nice addition because it helped develop the characters, made them feel real, and gave them even more personality. The passing comments from Jessie were hilarious, and Cloud constantly being teased by Aerith made me chuckle.
Monsters instinctively target weaker prey.
You'd better watch out then, Cloud.
But how do these characters fit in this world, and what roles do they play? A lot of the story is pretty straightforward. A megacorporation called Shinra harvests Mako from the planet, disregarding any environmental implications it may have for the planet's future. Those fortunate enough to work for the company get to live on the top level, underneath the open sky, under the real sun, while others are forced to live in slums below. Cloud, an ex-soldier of Shinra, has been contracted as a mercenary by a radical group called Avalanche that aims to bring down the megacorporation in hopes for a cleaner, healthier, and brighter future.
This was just the first reactor, and the planet won't be safe till we get the rest.
The game touches on some very modern issues such as economic inequality, corporate greed, and environmentalism. Cloud's past ties in with Tifa, and his newfound bonds with Aerith, Barrett, and the gang all unfold as he struggles with his own demons. Mainly told through cutscenes and dialogue between characters, there isn't much supplementary reading material in the game, and because of that, the game feels on rails, streamlined, or cinematic if you prefer that term. The sequence of events is very deliberate, and the game wants you to do things in a certain order. It's very apparent when the game shoehorns you to the correct activity if you try to do something else. However, some late game segments and chapters with side quests dragged on a bit too long and felt tedious. Of the 18 chapters in the game, the pacing for 2/3 of them were very controlled and generally very good. And honestly, having the tempo controlled so heavily was really nice because it always kept the story progressing forward. It felt enjoyable to play most of the time. I never once dreaded continuing because I was lost or because I had a shopping list of chores and quests waiting for me. Nor did it ever feel as if I had no freedoms whatsoever, partly because the choices you make and the activities you partake in do have a small effect on how the game plays out. The monsters you fight along the way and the side quests give enough experience without ever having to grind. The balance between gameplay and cutscenes was pretty good. With that said, there were quite a few cutscenes. I love cutscenes, but I don't think Final Fantasy VII Remake overdoes it. If there's an aspect of Final Fantasy I am very familiar with, it's the music. Every Final Fantasy concert I've attended was pretty special, but I remember the first being the most magical. Even though the details of those nights fade, the feelings remain. The music is as much a part of me as it is for many of you, I'm sure. Like it's been fossilized in my mind, always there, just waiting for something to bring it back to the surface. This remastered score recaptures that magic and takes me back, adding an intangible emotional depth that's hard to explain. I constantly catch myself commenting on how good the music is, on the title screen, during battle, during cutscenes. It's timeless. I definitely listen through rose-tinted earbuds, and I know it's near impossible to be objective. But the music is on another level, full stop. While the PS3 tech demo used Square's Crystal Tools game engine, the same engine that would be used to create the Final Fantasy XIII series, it was decided that they would go in a different direction for the remake. The team also didn't want to reuse character models from the film Advent Children because that technology was now 10 years old, but still wanted to balance the film's realism with a cartoon stylization. Rather than create an entirely new engine again, the development team instead licensed Unreal Engine 4, and I won't argue with the results. I'd say they've done a pretty remarkable job with the world. Character models looked great, and despite not being an open world, looked like it could be one. It's not all roses though. The texture quality on buildings was pretty low, and they definitely cut some corners at the scrapyards. Sometimes you get views like this, and other times like this. You can see here, the steel reinforcement beams have no definition. It's just an image put on a very basic polygon. These actually didn't bother me too much, as there were usually other things that drew my attention, but it's definitely a shortcoming in the graphical department. On the other side of the spectrum, despite the lack of details in some areas, the visual style of Midgar is quite unique. The aesthetic combination of an industrial, pseudo-European inspired architecture with dashes of American lifestyle was just so cool, and was a stark contrast to the slums below where the vast majority of citizens lived. Each sector's slum was unique with its own identity. The world was so well designed that I just wanted to run around in it. But it's not an open world, so moving around the sectors of Midgar was fairly straightforward or restrictive depending on how you looked at it. You'll come across some very basic puzzles when traveling between regions, but the map will clearly show you where you can go, and even if you wanted to explore, the game actively stops you from doing so a lot of the time. The world and map system is very similar to that of Final Fantasy XIII, which was heavily criticized back in the day for its linearity. It's not ideal, but it's just something you live with. But for those who enjoy linear games, then this won't be much of a problem. But running around town does come with some issues. The graphics settings menu was very bare bones, letting you customize very few visual settings. Not only that, optimization for the PC is a mixed bag. You may have noticed in some of the footage while in town, the game has issues with micro-stuttering that's fairly prevalent when running in the slums and in between sectors. If it were a fast-paced shooter, then this would definitely be a problem, but it was somewhat manageable here. I'm not particularly sensitive to micro-stutters during Traversal, but it's definitely noticeable and not great. If you know that micro-stutters are a problem for you, you can try your hands at various mods and workarounds to fix it. Thankfully, the micro-stutters don't carry over into combat and cutscenes where it would have been game-breaking. And despite the bare-bones settings menu, the game still looks great, even if it doesn't always run well. VII Remake has 2 difficulty settings and 2 combat modes, giving you 4 playstyles to choose from initially. Completing the game once will unlock a hard mode with a new trophy. The default combat style is fast-paced action sprinkled with tactical elements, while the classic combat style is more akin to the original Final Fantasy VII, allowing you to focus more on giving commands while your characters automatically attack and block for you. The new combat style is pretty fun and is the way I'd recommend playing it. Cloud's fast arcing sword attacks feel powerful, and Tifa's martial arts close quarter combat is elegant and stylish. Each character will have their own ATB bar that fills up over time. Attacking will fill this bar quicker, allowing you to use spells, special moves, and items. Head-on attacks will only get you so far as more difficult enemies have new offensive and defensive capabilities. You'll have to study them in order to exploit weaknesses and position yourself to effectively block or dodge heavy attacks. You can freely switch between members of your party if you desire, giving you a chance to try out each character's unique playstyle. The controls were for the most part well done. Locked on targets during combat would occasionally jump to a different target, and there was an odd dead zone when trying to pick up some items, but these were only minor gripes that didn't have a large impact on gameplay. Gain experience for killing creatures and earn skill points for each level up. The leveling system is pretty simple overall, but it's just deep enough to where it doesn't feel boring or meaningless. Spend those points to upgrade your weapon, giving you bonuses. Each weapon has its own leveling perks and can have its own unique special move. When you become proficient with the weapon, you'll be able to use that special move even after changing weapons. Customize your skill set by equipping different materia to learn new spells or gain new perks. Materias range from elemental spells, such as Fire and Blizzard, to support spells such as Cure, or simply just increasing your maximum HP. It's a well thought out system that allows you to customize your team's loadout to suit your particular playstyle. Depending on the item equipped, it could change the appearance of your character. For example, you can have Cloud wield his iconic Buster Sword, or use this spiked baseball bat. One of the few blemishes on Final Fantasy VII Remake were the side quests. There were only 3 chapters with side quests, and they were pretty lackluster. The pacing during these chapters really suffers if you choose to do them. This was probably the weakest point in the game, since a large portion of the quests weren't particularly interesting. You can do them for a bit of extra money and experience, but mostly because you want to hang out with Tifa or Aerith a bit longer. Considering the hoops that had to be jumped through and the decisions that had to be made in order for a remake to happen, it's a miracle this was made at all. What initially seemed like a cash grab turned out to be a surprisingly fully fledged game, expanding the relationships between and the stories behind some iconic characters. And while I really wanted this game on the PS3, I can't deny they've done an amazing job here. Better late than never, and possibly better than it would have been on the PS3. We'll never truly know. But the game isn't without its flaws. Side quests were fairly dull, and the pacing, while good overall, suffers during these segments. The other major flaw was the subpar performance while in towns on the PC, which hopefully will be fixed in the future. But outside of a couple flaws, the game successfully delivers a great experience. I like that this is a reimagining and not just a remaster. Not too dissimilar to what Capcom has done with the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes. The game feels full, rich, lively, and most importantly was fun to play, making it a triumphant victory for Square Enix. When I leave off on any given chapter for the night, I just want to progress to the next chapter as soon as I can. When I'm not playing the game, I'm thinking about the characters or humming the music. The characters have so much personality, and that's what makes this game. The story and combat were very good as well, but they really come second. The world looks beautiful, and the music fills it with emotion. To say more about the game would reveal more, and I want this to be as fresh for you as it was for me. If you want to share laughter, experience heartfelt moments, and stare at your screen smiling, all while playing as an impossibly lean man with a huge sword, then Final Fantasy VII's Midgar is where you'll want to be.
Beautiful.
I gotta go.
Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my review. But I want to ask you guys some questions. Do you like the trilogy format of the new Final Fantasy VII games, or do you think it should be different? Is it still worth playing the original even after playing VII Remake? Let me know what you think, and any ideas that you would like to see regarding Final Fantasy or future videos. But that's it for now. I hope you enjoy your time in Midgar. See ya.
Dun, 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 dun.